the darkness, nothing is off limits. Expand your perception of reality. Welcome to Blackout with Samantha Scarlette.
Hey guys, it's Friday, September 13th, Friday the 13th, 2019, and this is Blackout with Samantha Scarlette. That's me, only on Adobe Radio. I'm broadcasting you guys live from an undisclosed location way above the clouds in Midtown Manhattan. Today on the show, we're going to be talking to Tim Beckley. He's one of the hosts of the show Exploring the Bizarre on K-Core Radio, and I've been a guest on their show, I think, twice now. So I thought I'd return the favor and have Tim Beckley on for this week, and we're going to talk about all aspects of the paranormal. So we're going to go to a break, and then when we get back, we're going to talk to Tim Beckley. Hey guys, we're back from the break. Tim Beckley from Exploring the Bizarre on. Hey Tim, how are you?
Good. Hanging in there. Looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome. So I guess to start off, because I've been a guest on your show, but you've never been a guest on mine, so I thought it was time to extend the favor. I think I've been on show now. How do you get involved into the paranormal? What sparked this?
Oh my goodness. Well, you know, it goes way back. I lived in a house that had poltergeist phenomena.
We have to hear about that.
Yeah.
I want to hear this details.
All right. Yeah. Well, I guess I was rather young at the time, and we had all the phenomena. You know, doors opening and closing, and lights going on and off. And I remember on one occasion there was a dish, a chinaware, on the kitchen table, and it slid across the table. And I can't say that it floated to the floor, but it fell. What would be that? The equivalent of 3 feet or so, without breaking. And there's no reason really why it shouldn't have. Now, what we could talk. I guess we could discuss what exactly is a poltergeist, but most people think of it as a noisy, mischievous, or nasty ghost. Well, that may or may not be the case, but we did find out later on that a lady had given birth to a child, and this would have been around 1908 or 1910 or something, and both of them had died from I believe it was the diphtheria at the time. Anyway, it was killing a lot of people, and they both died around the same time, and they were buried in the same coffin. And later on, my godmother came to visit, and she had an experience where she heard a baby crying between the door to our apartment and the door that went to the apartment upstairs. And she opened the door, and supposedly there was a woman holding a baby in her arms. And being a strict Catholic that she was, she slammed the door and refused to go back and investigate. Then I had a few out-of-body experiences where I found myself floating above the bed, and the room was filled with this color. It was almost like a psychedelic experience with a variety of colors and sounds. And,
sounds like absorption.
Yeah, and that happened a few times, and I began to read up on the subject. But I guess the big transformation would have come when I was about 10 years old. It was a warm summer night, like in July or August of 1957. And this is before there was air conditioning, so it was normal for people to set out on the front stoop until it cooled off a little, and then you could go back inside. Anyway, I was there with my mom and a couple of neighbors, and someone came up and said, look up into the sky, there's something strange there. And indeed, Sammy, there was. There were 2 objects, brightly lit. Now, I can't tell you that I saw any landing gear. None of the little men waved to me through portholes or anything like that. But there were 2 circular-shaped lights just above the cloud covering. And these objects, I would say that they were, maybe 30, 40 feet in diameter. They were a pretty good size, swung around and around in the sky. There was an abandoned factory building, Lefkowitz Leather, across the street, and one of them would position themselves above the building there, and the other one would be closer to our house.
Was this
Not
here
directly
in New York City?
overhead. No, this was in New Brunswick, New Jersey.
Okay. It's still a very congested area.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't that congested at the time, but not like anything is today, of course, you know. But anyway, we watched these things for about I guess 15 minutes or so, and then the one across the street, they kept maneuvering in the sky. The one across the street would come and hover over the street in front of us, and the one in front of us would go back over the circular pattern. So this lasted for about maybe 15 minutes, and then finally, I can't say we got bored, but it wasn't doing anything, and so we went inside. The next day or the day after that, there was a little item in the newspaper that other people had witnessed this, but they were saying that it was nothing more unusual than a weather balloon. Well, now, between weather balloons and the planet Venus,
the favorite excuse.
it's got. How many weather balloons have you ever seen in your life? I mean,
I've seen zero.
Zero. I mean, like unless you live near an airport or some weather bureau, you're not going to see a balloon. And as for the planet Venus, the planet Venus. There's not two of them, and they don't circle in the sky. So even at the tender age of 10, I realized that something rather unusual was going on. So I started reading whatever I could on the subject. I took out a couple of books or bought a couple of paperbacks. In those days, they were 35 cents, you know. And one of them was Major Donald E. Keyhoe's, a book he wrote called "Flying Saucers Are from Outer Space." And I was hooked. I mean, I just found it to be a fascinating subject, and I gobbled up everything I could find. And I started actually putting out a newsletter when I was 14 or 15 years old. I went out and bought a little mimeograph machine, you know, and it started out with 10 pages, and by the time I called it quits, it was up to 40 pages. It had a circulation of about 1,500. In those days, you had to, collate and staple them and do the homework yourself, because there was no, Kinko's or quick copy. Mm-hmm. So it was quite a task, while other teenagers were out fooling around and having fun. And well, nobody smoked pot in those days. I don't even know if anybody grabbed a beer. Come to think of it, that's how ancient all this was. I guess I became hooked on UFOs, and I followed the subject, and I've made one of the few people I could actually say made a career out of this, although I've done a lot of different things, from being a rock and roll promoter to making horror films, and I can't think of hardly anything that I haven't done outside of robbing a bank. And since you and I are going to do that, this afternoon, then there'll be nothing new. So,
of course,
there you
going
go.
incriminates. Now, going back to the whole thing with the poltergeist, were there any young females living in the household? Because I've heard, and I researched, that a lot of the poltergeist phenomenon is associated with teenage girls.
Well, come to think of it, I did have a sister. Let me see. She would have been 8 years older than I was. Let's see. So that's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, I guess she. Yeah, okay. I can't even think of her as being there. But she would have been 8 years older than I was. But I don't know if you could.
Because it's supposed to look like a manifestation of teenage angst.
Yeah. No,
but if somebody was seeing a full-bodied woman holding a baby in the doorway, I don't think that's even a poltergeist. That's a full-blown haunting.
I'm getting some terrible feedback here.
Oh, you are?
Oh, feedback. Yes.
I don't hear
Okay.
anything on my end. Um,
Well,
hello?
anyway, there. Like I say, there was. My sister was living in the house, but we were able to track it back to this woman who apparently had given birth. They
Well,
had
that's what I'm
her and
saying.
her.
If neighbors
Yeah,
saw her actual apparition, I wouldn't call it a poltergeist. I would call that a
yeah,
haunting, because poltergeist is usually just
yeah.
not a specific entity.
Yeah, well, but again, there were like I say, lights and lights going on and off, and doors opening and closing. But anyway, the main upshot of all of this is I was kind of drawn to the paranormal at a very early age, and it's never left me. It's something that's fascinated me all these years. And even at this rather young age of 15, I began writing letters to the newspapers in the area, asking people to send me their sightings and things like that. And some of the local media, there was no local TV, but certainly no internet, but the radio stations started calling me, and I would go to the stations in those days. I mean, it was done in the studio, not over
And then there was
the
internet,
phone.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and they were surprised that I was, so young. I guess they figured some adult was coming, and here I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And then I started coming into the city from New York. I merged my little publication, the Interplanetary News Service Report, with a larger magazine called Saucer News, and the publisher Jim Mosley hired me as managing editor. And it was a bigger magazine. It was sold on the newsstand, and then I became a stringer for the Inquirer and the Globe,
Oh wow.
and I met a lot of celebrities. In fact, I've done a couple of books on celebrities and their UFO sightings and paranormal experiences and things along
Now here's a
that
serious
line.
question.
Yeah,
How many of the stories that you covered for the Globe or the Inquirer were true?
they were true. Oh, this is something that most people don't realize. At least in the case of the Inquirer, they required very strict verification. I would have to. It's not the same publisher as today. It's in those days it was a pretty serious publication, and sure they got sued every once in a while because something would slip through the cracks, as they say, occasionally. But they would require pretty much verification. I'd have to provide them with tapes of the conversations that I had with these celebrities and all, and they had fact checkers. I mean, can you believe that a tabloid with a
I
fact
have
checker?
actually heard stuff like that before. The things published in the Inquirer,
Yeah,
even
yeah,
though they forget proven
and,
are true.
yeah. And in fact, there was a singer by the name of senior moment. And anyway, there was a singer who told me his story about having a UFO experience in Central Park while he was walking his dog. In fact, there were a lot of people that had UFO sightings in Central Park. Muhammad Ali, I actually jogged with him one morning as he related his um experience about seeing these two objects that look like giant light bulbs hovering behind an apartment building there. But this other singer told me about how he was out walking his dog, and this UFO came over, I guess, pretty much a treetop level, and um, I had it published. It was published in the Inquirer, and years later, I met his son, who was a documentary filmmaker and had done some things with Bud Hopkins on UFOs. And I said, I met your dad, and I wrote this article about him. And he said, yeah, my father said that was the most accurate story, quote wise, that was ever printed about him. and that was in the Inquirer. Oh, it was Mel Torme. I mean, I don't know why
Okay.
that. So yeah, but he was known as the Velvet Fog. I guess that was kind of the deep sound of his voice. And his son was Tracy Torme, who made the movie on Travis Walton.
Oh, Fire and Sky.
Yeah, Fire in the Sky. Yeah. So my memory is clear. But so I had quite a career. I enjoyed doing that, and then I worked for a lot of the rock and roll magazines. So I hung out backstage and partied with some of the best damn bands in the world. In fact, I just got the sad news that one of my favorite artists, Eddie Money, passed away.
Yeah.
Two tickets to Paradise, and I want to go back. And he just started, a TV show with his family. They have their own rock band. His two sons and his daughter, and all are started to continue the band going. And he's quite a character. He wasn't that old. I don't, I hadn't really got any background.
70.
Yeah. Well, today that's not,
Yeah, that's not that old.
That's not bad.
And
Anyway,
he died of cancer.
that was, yeah. Well, that was anyway. So that's kind of my career in a nutshell, and I still continue to do this. I have my Exploring the Bizarre show that I co-host every Thursday night with Tim Schwartz. He's my partner in crime. And I think we're up to over 400 shows. But
Wow.
you've been doing you've been doing your podcast for a while too, right?
Yeah, this year I've been kind of bad. I've had so much stuff going on, so it's not been as consistent. I think that this is about episode. Oh, sorry. I live in I take a show in my apartment in New York. My dog's being really bad to But I think up to about 85, 86 episodes of this show, and then previous was on. I did Eddie, Jason, and Chris did right around 30 episodes for that, and I previously did another show where I did 10 episodes. So, I mean over 100 radio episodes at this point.
You're busy skateboarding.
Yeah, I'm creating. Anybody that follows my social media, I'm in the process of creating. I actually have not been personally skate much lately. I'm creating a skateboard company. And
yes, I heard.
A lot goes into creating a company. So it's like yes, last week was like LLC formation, bank accounts. Yep. It's a lot of red paperwork, and
I follow you on Facebook because I always look forward to your next fashion statement.
Yeah. So it's been a crazy amount of time to do that, and I've just got a lot going on. But yeah, everyone thinks I'm always skateboarding. I actually have not been lately. I surfed more this summer than skateboarded, but yeah. Now, it's interesting to me when talking about people like jogging Muhammad Ali and Central Park and Mel Torme. New York City, you think this would not place of UFO sighting, but there are a lot of UFO sightings apparently here in New York City. I'm really upset I still have yet to see any. I feel like I would be able to see them from where I live. I should set up a GoPro or something.
Yeah. Well, actually, there was one sighting, and I don't remember the year, but the Golf and Western building right off of Central Park. It's not there anymore. In fact, I think it's one of Trump's buildings. There was a restaurant up on top, maybe 50 floors up. Mm-hmm. And there was one particular evening where apparently 60 people had a sighting of something that came over. Well, it looked directly over Central Park.
Wow.
Beautiful view, beautiful view. Any of those hotels up in that area. In fact, I once went to a party that George Harrison held for Ravi Shankar, and it's the first time it was in the Carlton, which was run off of.
Wait, there's a Carlton.
I think the Carlton. It's many years ago, but it was the first time that I had Indian food. which I absolutely love, but I can't remember much about the party because it's so long ago. but I remember in the restrooms there were these tapestries of the Kama Sutra.
Oh my gosh, that's wild.
Which just shows you that my mind is not on UFOs all the time. But John Lennon had a very famous sighting.
The Dakota.
He was. Well, I got this right from the horse's mouth. He was dating May Pang at the time, and they were standing, I believe she said, naked on the balcony, and she had come in to get a delivery of a pizza or something like that, and he yelled at her to come back out, and there was this UFO that he said that he saw, and it was coming directly towards them, and he reported. He actually called the newspaper. He called the Daily News to report what he had seen, and he called the tower or somebody at Newark Airport. But most of these things I kind of think just kind of slip through the cracks because people, if they have these sightings, they don't report them because they don't think that anybody will believe them, or even if they report them, there's no media, very little media coverage.
I mean, what's interesting to me though, like the John, because I've heard the John Lennon before, is that if that was at the Dakota, that's not even like, if you're not from New York, never been here, you'd think, oh well, he was up really high in the UFO, but the Dakota is not New York standard. It's not a very tall building. I believe it's like 6 or 7 stories, which compared to I mean, like I live on the 44th floor. I feel like it'd be less fantastical if there was some kind of craft. If I saw an aircraft hovering outside of my window, than some on the 7th floor by Central Park, where the tree covering's almost as high as that.
If I were piloting a UFO, I'd come right outside your window and yell at you. But there was a case now. Stuart Whitman, who is, I still believe, alive, maybe in his 90s. He was an actor. The only movie that I can think that he was in is The Sound and the Fury, which I couldn't even tell you what it was about. Maybe it was a war. Maybe it was a war story. I'm sure some of well, you probably got young listeners, so I'm not sure that they would know either. But anyway, he had come to New York, I guess, to promote a film. And he was staying in one of the hotels along Central Park. And this is the night of the big blackout in 1965. He woke up. He woke up in the middle of the night, and I guess he went to look at the clock that's next to the bed that's lit up, and there was nothing lit up. Mm-hmm. And so he pulled the curtains aside in his room, and he saw that it was pitch black outside. So then apparently an object approached or was hovering there, and they spoke to him telepathically. And this is a very strange incident. I mean, I consider this highly reliable. Now, a lot of actors will, maybe not a lot, but some actors will try to pull the wool over your eye, like William Shatner, who I interviewed years ago, and he told me this story about having a UFO experience and a Men in Black following him while he was on his motorcycle. And then he said years later, he fooled that guy from the Inquirer. Well, I didn't make him take a lie detector test. It was a celebrity piece, not a scientific report. But in the case of Stuart Whitman, there just wasn't any reason for him, first of all, to make up the story, and he wasn't a Bill Shatner. And second of all, I don't think that most people realize that there was a connection between blackouts and UFOs. Anyway, the voice inside the object told him that they were responsible for the blackout, and they were very worried about our use of atomic and nuclear energy, because not only could we destroy ourselves, but we might inadvertently harm their civilization as well.
Well, I think it's interesting that you said that, because I've heard a lot of stuff that, like, people of the 2003, was it 2003 or 2002, the really big black, the whole East Coast, that was caused by UFO.
Well, there have been a lot of blackouts, especially in South America, that have apparently tie-ins with the UFO sightings. We have everything here from localized power failures. People have been driving along the highway, and their cars would stall after a UFO came down very low or landed near them. It's known as the electromagnetic effect. But apparently, these visitors, the others, whatever you want to call them, I don't call them aliens because that has a bad connotation today, and some people get confused what kind of aliens we're speaking to. But can you imagine? We want to put up a border to keep out people from other countries. Why in God's name? What people say? Well, why don't they land on the White House lawn? That would probably be the last place you would want to land. I mean, where is really a neutral territory?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, some of these guys may not be so good after all. In fact, this coming week we have what was originally called the storming Area 51.
Oh, yeah. What is it, like alien stock or something?
Yes. Well, okay. Well, now there's been some confusion about this. We just came out with a book called Area 51 Warning, Keep Out. I was up at Area 51 maybe 20 years ago. In fact, we had a little mini convention there at the little Alien Inn. We had about 150 people showed up to hear Bill Cooper, who was a very controversial figure, spoke about the Kennedy assassination and a secret trade agreement with extraterrestrials and so forth. And we had our sky watch. We didn't really see anything too unusual. And we were even harassed by the Lincoln County police. We were on the TV, like on the noon news, and they interviewed the sheriff, and he said, well, we don't mind then people coming out here. We like the tourists, but yet they harass you. They follow you when you come out of the parking lot of the little Alien Inn. My God, I swerved on the highway. Now, mind you, this is at 1 o'clock in the morning. I swerved on the highway to avoid hitting a rabbit that was crossing the road. I'm not too much into roadkill these days,
Yeah.
And so I went a little bit over the line. Now, mind you, there isn't a damn person within 50 miles of here. But
it's middle of nowhere.
The cop car was right up my backside, and he pulled me over. I had two little honeys in the car with me, he made me walk the line and say the alphabet backwards and repeat the Star Spangled Banner on the hood of the car and all that nonsense. I was quite perturbed about that, and I'd like to stop senior citizens. Anyway, I guess they're easily frightened. Some of them, of course, you never know. That part of the country usually has open gun, laws. So
Yeah.
people are packing. I would guess, but there've been sightings out there, and there are some people who claim that the bodies of the ETs that might have crashed and died in Roswell, they were stored there. I don't know if they'd still be stored there if they were taken there, because that's back in the late 1940s. But people were seeing things from off the highway. Strange craft in the sky, dish-shaped and ball-shaped, and things that sputtered and stopped and seemed to be teleporting itself, because it would be in one portion of the sky one moment and then instantaneously somewhere else. And then there was a gentleman by the name of Bob Lazar who came forward, who claimed that he had actually worked there, and that one of the things he had worked on were these alien craft from other worlds. Now, supposedly also, too, they have reconstructed some of these devices using back technology, and so now the U.S. and probably other countries have UFOs of their own. So that causes a bit of confusion when you look up into the sky and you see something glowing and coming toward you. You don't know whether it's from out there or from in here.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious. What do you think about the whole thing? Then, shortly after I spoke to you last, back in December, right before New Year, there was that thing in Queens where the sky lit up blue, and they claim it's a kinetic explosion. But I feel a lot of people believe otherwise. What's your take on that?
Yeah, geez, I don't know as if I have a take on that. I didn't talk to any of the the witnesses or anything like that. It could have been a natural phenomenon of some type. Now, they even have photographs and video that have been taken from satellites and planes flying at high altitude that show these emissions, blue lights, and I think some of them are maybe yellow, coming up off of the surface of the planet. I believe they have termed them sprites, and this is an unexplained phenomena. Sometimes the sky does light up supernaturally. I don't know what you would call it, but they try to say, "Oh, it's the aurora borealis." Well, I don't think the aurora borealis has been seen in recent years in Queens.
Yeah, I mean, we can't even see the stars in New York City.
No. Well, you got to go up. You've got to go up to Pine Bush, which is about an hour drive from here.
I have no doubt out of the city, but in the city limits, with Queens, I believe it falls in the city limits. You can't see it.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. But like you say, there have been a heck of a lot of UFO sightings over the city here. But that's the case in most big communities. One time some editor dared me to prove there had, because they always say on the media, oh, it's some redneck or some farmer in the middle of Iowa who sees these things, but that's not true at all.
Well, I wonder.
In fact,
to cut you off, but I wonder what the Central Park sightings is, if it be due to the property of Times Square, because I believe you can see Times Square from outer space, the light. So the way that Times Square is kind of shaped, it almost would be like a landing strip to Central Park.
Yeah. Or how about Las Vegas?
Oh my gosh, Vegas.
But there are a lot of places that I've flown over. You see nothing. Maybe 5 houses lit up down there. But there's all kinds of weird phenomena that goes on around the planet that cannot be explained. There was one place that I visited many years ago called Brown Mountain, which is down in North Carolina. Yeah, Brown Mountain Lights. These things come up from the valley and drift across the sky. Now, what most people don't realize is that there is a very strong deposit of crystals in the mountain. And a lot of times where there is metal deposits like gold and silver and crystals, these things seem to show up in abundance. I don't know whether they use the energy from the crystals to transport themselves, or whether it's how it's related. But there are these ghost lights that have been seen quite frequently. Brown Mountain Lights. There's the Marfu lights in Texas, and probably there's another one in Oklahoma. They call it the Spook City Light, and other places too that you don't hear about it. But I did some research on YouTube recently, and found that other people had there were other locations where these things have been showing up for centuries, and they usually try to explain it by saying, oh, it's the reflections of car lights or a train coming down the track. Except that a lot of instances, the sightings of these spook lights or ghost lights go back before there were cars on the road. Especially in the case of Brown Mountain, where the local indigenous people, the Native Americans, talk about seeing these globes of fire or light back many years ago.
Which makes you wonder what they are.
But they do seem to be under intelligent control, and I say that because when I visited Brown Mountain, I spoke to they actually for a while had a watchtower where people could climb and look out for these things. There's still a marker on the highway put up by the forestry department. Good location to watch for the Brown Mountain lights and so forth. But several of the witnesses told me how they had seen these objects, and as they would approach them, they would disappear, but if they turned around, they would be in back of them, almost as if they were playing a cat and mouse game. So it's very strange. These UFOs, or however you define them, come in all shapes and sizes, and seem to have all different programs or agendas in mind, and people are going, oh, well, I never finished up on the Area 51. Okay, well, there was talk about having this alien stock, but the guy that was doing that, who originally came up with the idea on Facebook, gave up on the idea because of the logistics, and said he was going to hold his activities in a bar back in Los Angeles, and gave the impression that everything else had had been canceled. However, I spoke several times within the last couple of days to the proprietors out at the Little Alien Inn, which is within a couple of miles of the gates of Area 51, right near where people have had these sightings on and off over the years. And they said they've got 30 acres put aside for camping. They've got a stage, and they're going to have live music. And I guess people maybe even talking or something. And certainly the bar and the restaurant will be open. So to give the impression that the whole thing had been canceled is just not true. Now, I should warn that it is a long trek from Las Vegas, the glittering lights of the Las Vegas Strip, to the Little Alien Inn. I once made the journey. It's about 90 miles, and people had warned me, make sure you've got a full tank of gas, because there isn't another place to fill up for 60 miles.
Oh my God!
Well, I had rented a Mustang convertible. I had two very attractive young ladies in the car who insisted on playing the music loud and dancing around in the back seat while I drove. And somehow, I guess I forgot to fill up the gas tank. And somewhere out on the extraterrestrial highway, which was not called that then, the car sputtered and spit and stalled and came to a stop. Well, the temperature with the hood down is at least 100 degrees. I mean, in the middle of the desert, there is no shade, and there's nobody even passing on the highway. Now, I could have easily turned into a marshmallow if it hadn't been for these two very attractive young ladies who managed to stop a gentleman, naturally, in a car, naturally, who was pulling a motorboat, and he managed to siphon out some gas from the motorboat to put into our car to get us going again, much to the chagrin of his wife, who I guess was anxious to get to Lake Powell or wherever they were going. I don't know where you motorboat out in the middle of the desert, but I guess they were on their way to Colorado or somewhere. You know? And so we got started again, and we proceeded to the Little Alien Inn. They have some nice rooms there, but unfortunately they only have about 11 of them, so they're not going to put you up for the night if you're going out there for the alien stock. But start out if you're going out there, and I'm sure people have made plane reservations and all. Do be informed that it's going on, and just take it easy and don't storm the gate, because the security there will make it miserable for you, and then they'll turn you over to the local sheriff, and you'll have now. This is a scam, Scarlette. If there ever was one, they charge you $600 before you get out of town. That's the fine for crossing over the barrier.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that sounds like something you'd see on TV in Mayberry or something. You know, where you don't even go before the judge. You just pay the fine and then you leave. You know, like a speed trap. Speed traps they used to have in the old days, and they probably still do.
Now, over the years, because I've been at this long time, of all the paranormal things that you've encountered or heard about, what was the one that shocked you the most to come to the realization, believe it's true?
Oh, geez. Well, I hadn't even thought about that. Shocked me the most. Well, Sammy, I'm not easily shocked. That's probably one of the problems, and I've seen and heard, I guess, just about everything. I did a book. We've got about 309 titles. If any of your listeners are interested in pursuing this further, they can always just go to Amazon and type in my name, Timothy Beckley, Beckley, or send me an email at mrufo8@hotmail. We did a book. We try to do 2 or 3 new books every a month, even though I'm semi-retired. We did a book recently called Screwed by the Aliens. Now, it has a double meaning. It is actual cases where people claim they were abducted and molested and forced into having sex with these beings. Even going back to the Bible, it talks about how the giants came and took the daughters of men because they were fair and so forth and so on. So this is something that's been going on for a long, long time. In occultism, we would call this the phenomena of like succubus and incubus, and it's a very negative aspect. Although some people claim that they've had sex with aliens and they look like angels, and they were pretty happy about it. But to each their own, I suppose. Anyway, this is a very negative aspect, and I thought, well, these people are they're fantasizing, or they're a little bit unhinged, or don't have a man to call their own. But the more I investigated, I mean, these people seem to be very, not all of them necessarily, but they all seem to be fairly stable and reporting what they had honestly believed was happening to them. Of course, probably the most famous case would be of Whitley Strieber, who describes in Communion how he was probed by the aliens. I mean, that's become kind of a standard joke even on the Simpsons. So that I would say is to me the most perplexing puzzle as far as the occult and the supernatural goes, and certainly a frightening aspect of this. But then on the other hand, you got the good guys that are coming here. We did another book just came out about a month ago called the Space Brothers Speak, Transmissions from the Solar Council, and it's about the Ashtar Command. And these are supposed to be these mighty space brothers who are here looking to help the spiritual uplifting of the planet Earth, and keeping an eye on us to make sure that we don't just destroy ourselves. And we had recently on the Exploring the Bizarre a very interesting fellow who claims that he's met Ashtar and other members of the Ashtar Command, Mark Brinkerhoff, who lives, by the way, near Central Park in New York City. And this fellow, you should have him on your show sometime, is a UFO repeater. A UFO repeater being an individual who has the capability to go out either day or night and with his camera or video and take photos of the sky. And when the you look at the pictures, digital now, I guess, or the videos, strange things appear. And sometimes they actually are, Mark is actually able to call down these craft. He goes to his window. I mean, I've seen a whole series of photographs. We reprinted them in the UFO repeaters. The camera doesn't lie, of these objects, and they're not airplanes. Some people say, oh, they're party balloons. But the neighborhood he lives in must have more parties than anybody else if these are party balloons. But he's even had photographs. If you blow up the object, you'll see a porthole with the shadow of a being inside. You know, this is something that's followed him around all his life. So now I can't tell you whether he's actually been in touch with the people from other planets, and he really knows Ashtar and all. I try to keep a neutral attitude on all of this, Sammy. You know, I don't try to get overwhelmed by it. I have a social life and things that I do, and I try not to be overly consumed by it. But I find it both fascinating and to some degree entertaining. I mean, some of these shows now on TV, like on the Travel Channel, they're fantastic. There's a program on there called Contact, where these people travel all over the world and investigate these things firsthand and find out a lot of things that independent researchers would not be able to find out because they don't have the backing of a big cable station and are not financially able to do it. I mean, to be a serious researcher, like I made a lot of money over the years publishing books and articles and things. But I pumped a lot of it back in traveling and going around and studying this. And so that's why you have me on your show.
Now, of all the things that you've encountered, one thing you do not believe at all.
I lost you on that one. Repeat that.
Of all the stuff that's posed in the paranormal community, what's one thing you just don't believe in?
Oh my goodness, what don't I believe in? Billy Meyer.
I would agree on that.
His photos are so
My
phony.
children's book. They're just cut and paste.
But not only that, I'll go along with almost anything, but not for people who turn this into a cult of personality, because this has nothing to do with a cult of personality. When you tell me that the space people are talking to me and they don't talk to anybody else, it's a bunch of hooey. That's all it is. It's self-aggrandizement. I'm using big words today. Self-aggrandizement, and so I don't go along with that. Also, too, exorcisms. Yeah, I don't believe. And Satan is a Christian invention. So yes, there are negative spirits out there. Maybe some people have been possessed by them, but you're not going to get rid of them with a bottle of holy water or holding a cross up to them. In fact, my friend Paul Eno, who is the host of a radio show, podcast, he said he has gotten more positive response from poltergeists, or non-positive response, I suppose you could say, by telling jokes than you can do by holding up a cross or spattering the person who's supposedly possessed with holy water.
That's too funny. Yeah, I feel like the jury for me is very much out on that one as well. Not that I mean, I'm not gonna don't believe in the exorcisms. I think potentially possible. Billy Murray, though, 110%. I'm not a believer in. I also, one thing I'm not a big believer in.
What's
Bigfoot.
that? Bigfoot. I'm sure there's one living in your apartment building.
I just like Bigfoot. I just have a lot of trouble believing Bigfoot.
Bigfoot it seems to be yes. Well, now you know why he's elusive, because he's not a physical being. I mean, these guys are out there hunting. I say guys because most of them are guys, but there are some gals that also have an interest in Bigfoot. We've had a couple of them on our show. Cryptozoology is very popular today. I think there's more interest in cryptozoology maybe than in UFOs even, because Bigfoot has been seen all over, but people are looking for flesh and blood, creatures and feces and animals that have been eaten half, and it doesn't happen because these things seem to be supernatural in origin. They come and go through portals or time warps or something, and a lot of times people see UFOs and there are Bigfoot sightings. It all seems to happen in the same areas. We call them hot spots or window areas. In fact, we did a book. Notice how everything leads into a plug. We did a. Well, if you had your skateboard company, you'd be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
We did a book called Alien Strongholds on Earth, where places where in fact, I tell people you don't have to go out to Area 51 and get shot and hang out in the desert. There are places you can go that are a lot more pleasant, like Sedona, Arizona, for example, and or Pine Bush, New York. And why don't we skateboard up there next year when they have their festival? And
for sure,
we'll hang out near the graveyard where they have a lot of the sightings. In fact, there's a fellow who is a scientist, Bruce Cornett, who comes on our show from time to time, who's had sightings there, and he just did a big volume scientifically trying to ascertain the movements of these objects and so forth. And then there's Linda Zimmerman, who's done several books, not only on zombies, has nothing to do with her interest in the triangular shaped UFOs, but she's kept abreast of all these reports of a boomerang-shaped craft that have been seen up and down the Hudson Valley for decades. I mean, actually, I think the first report she has is like from 1896. So there you have it, Scarlette. I mean, that's my life in a nutshell.
Yeah. I was gonna say we're about time, but let everybody know where they can get your books and where they can get your show.
Well, if you come knock on my door. No, actually, of course, does anybody order? I used to get sacks of mail. Now I get one payment from Amazon. So if you go to Amazon and just type in Tim Beckley or Timothy Beckley, you'll find more books than you could shake up. Don't forget my YouTube channel, because I'm also a cartoon character. Now, how many ufologists can you claim they were a cartoon character? The YouTube channel is called Mr. UFO's Secret Files. And that's where we archive our Exploring the Bizarre shows that we do every Thursday night on KCORradio.com. And it's also on Stitcher and iTunes, which I don't even know how to find, and something called Google Play and SoundCloud. And anybody who wants to can steal the show. And you'll have a good time on that, because we try to keep it light, entertaining, light, but also, since I've been doing this for so many years, I know how to pull the best information out of people. We don't spend, good God, I heard somebody talking the other night who's supposed to be a big talk show host. It was 3 hours of him talking, and I think the guest was on for 20 minutes. There are some people, hosts, that I cringe when they call because, if you have me on for a guest, I should be
You
able
want to
to
be talking.
Yeah, just like you let me do.
Yeah.
Anyway, Scarlett, a pleasure. I always enjoy having you on my program, even when you have people in your apartment who are high on LSD.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is
Yeah,
that
well, I had
was
fun.
that was a
It was
very
like a big.
stressful day. There was a party. That was
Yeah.
yes. I had a 20-year-old fashion model who
Yeah.
had been brought over on. It was just LSD. It was like to quote the movie Into the Greek, the world had seen a Jeffrey, and then once he came down, which was around the time I had to do, he decided to throw a party, and there were like girls over here that hang out with Jake Paul. If you're not familiar with who that is, consider yourself lucky. So yeah, it's a very stressful.
Well, it's always a pleasure to hang with you, even if it's only on the air. Sometimes we will have to meet in the park on a skateboard. Although I
don't skateboard in Central Park actually. I ride bikes in the park.
Yeah,
I like to do the bike ride.
You're much more active than I am because you're much younger than I am. But anyway, that's what it is. And God bless you and your listeners and send me some money in the mail. All right.
Okay, we'll talk soon.
All right. Bye, Sammi.
Until next week.